This is money. A stone as tall as a man, quarried on an island 400 miles away and carried home across open ocean on a raft. The people who made it called it rye. It bought houses. It bought marriages. It settled debts that outlived the men who owed them. And then, one day at sea, a storm. The stone slipped its ropes and sank to the bottom of the ocean where no one could reach it and no one would ever see it again. And the village agreed that it was still perfectly good money. It kept changing hands for generations, a fortune everyone knew the owner of that no one alive had ever laid eyes on. Here is the part nobody says out loud. Money has always been made up. Every object we have ever agreed to call it, shells, stones, silver, paper, the numbers glowing on a screen, every single one of them worked flawlessly, right up until the day everyone quietly stopped agreeing. It has happened to every money on this list. Never yet to yours. Because the money was never the stone. It was the agreement about the stone. The rye was never really the rock. It was a promise, passed hand to hand, remembered out loud. No vault, no ink, no bank. Just a village that decided together to believe the same thing on the same morning. It only ever needed one thing to be worth a fortune, that everyone kept agreeing it was. Which sounds absurd, until you notice that we never actually stopped. The largest rye stone anyone ever found is wider than a car is long, 12 feet across, 4,000 kilos of solid rock. Money you could not lift, could not hide, and could not spend without an audience. And it is, in a strange way, the most honest money in this entire story. So the people who came next tried to make money behave. About 26 centuries ago, in a kingdom called Lydia, someone shrank it. Instead of a house-sized stone, a lump of metal the size of a thumbnail. They pressed a little lion's head into it, a king's mark, a promise you could carry. And they called it a coin. But here is the part the coin would rather you did not know. Those first coins were not even pure gold. They were electrum, a wild, natural mix of gold and silver, no two lumps quite alike. So the metal was never really the point. The stamp was the point. You trusted the little lion, so you never had to weigh the gold yourself. And for a long while, this worked beautifully. Rome took the idea and carried it across 3 continents. Augustus fixed his silver coin, the denarius, at almost pure silver. For 200 years, a soldier on a cold British wall and a merchant in the Egyptian sun trusted the exact same little silver disc. It was, by the standards of this story, astonishingly honest money. Which is, of course, exactly when someone decided to ruin it. The emperor was Nero, and the year was 64. He looked at all that lovely silver and had one small, terrible idea. What if the coins were just slightly less silver? Who would ever notice? So he shaved it, barely. A whisper of silver skimmed off every coin. Enough that for every 1,000,000 coins the empire collected in tax, the mint could quietly strike 1.2 million to spend. A printing press, 17 centuries before the printing press. And nobody holding the coin could see the missing fifth. Then the next emperor did the same, and the next, and the next. A little less silver each time. A little less. A little less.
2 centuries later, the proud silver denarius was a copper slug, wearing a thin silver wash that rubbed off in your hand. A shopkeeper could feel the copper edge showing through and quietly raise his price. No announcement, no decree. Just 1,000 small decisions to stop believing. And one morning, the market simply stopped pricing things in the coin at all. The coin had not changed shape. Belief had just moved. Perfectly good money, right up until it wasn't. Now travel east to China, where money had the opposite problem entirely. Their everyday money was made of cast iron, and iron, as it turns out, is extraordinarily heavy to carry. To buy a single bolt of silk, you needed a whole cart, 1,000 coins, 25 kilos of clanking metal just to go shopping. So the merchants got clever. They left the heavy iron locked in a warehouse and traded light little paper receipts for it instead. The paper was light, the paper was easy, and soon the paper simply was the money.
In the year 1024, the government made it official. It printed the first real banknotes in all of human history. 6 colors of ink, anti-forgery seals, serial marks, 1,000 years before the dollar was ever dreamed of. Paper money is not modern. Paper money is medieval, and it is Chinese. And then, having invented it, they did the one thing every government eventually does. They printed far too much. And the paper died the coin's exact same death. Meanwhile, on the far side of the world, England ran its whole treasury on sticks, notched wooden sticks. The exchequer cut a stick, carved a debt into its edge, and split it lengthwise so the two halves had to match. And those half sticks got spent hand to hand as money. For 600 years, the wealth of England was, quite literally, kindling. And in 1834, they finally burned the old sticks in a furnace under Parliament. The fire got out of hand, and the money burned down the government it had spent 6 centuries counting for. Perfectly good money. Which brings us to London in the 1660s and the cleverest trick in the whole story. People had gold, and gold is heavy and very easy to steal. So they left it with goldsmiths, men who already had strong iron vaults, and in return, the goldsmith wrote them a receipt. And people, being people, got lazy. Instead of fetching their gold to pay for things, they just handed over the receipt. The receipt was a good deal lighter to carry around town than a heavy locked bag of gold coins. So the receipt became the money, and the gold just sat in the dark. And this is where one goldsmith, counting his vault late one evening, noticed something. Almost nobody ever came to collect their gold. It just sat there, gathering dust. So he could quietly write more receipts for gold he simply did not have, lend them out, and quietly charge interest on every single one. He was lending out gold that did not exist, and as long as nobody asked for it all at once, it worked perfectly. Now, that is not a scam. That is a bank. Every bank you have ever used does exactly this right now, today. The money in your account is not sitting in a drawer somewhere. It is a promise, written down and lent out several times over. Now, jump forward a century to a brand new country with no gold and no power to tax. It needed to fund a revolution, so it did the only thing it could. It printed paper, called it the Continental, and paid the soldiers in it. For a while, the promise of a country that barely existed yet was enough. And then, Congress printed a little too much of it. By the 1780s, it took 600 Continentals to buy one silver dollar. The currency died so completely that its own name became an insult. Not worth a Continental. 2 centuries on, people still say it. A whole nation's money reduced to a punchline. And now, the joke stops being funny.
Germany, 1923.
A wheelbarrow full of banknotes would not buy you a loaf of bread. Children built little toy houses out of bundled banknotes because the money was worth less than the wooden blocks it replaced. Families fed banknotes into the stove to keep warm because the paper was worth less than the firewood it could have bought. Prices doubled every 3.5 days. Workers were paid twice a day and ran to spend it before lunch because by dinner the number had already rotted. At the start of that year, one American dollar was worth about 1,500 German marks. That was already a catastrophe, unfolding in slow, patient motion. By the end of that same year, $1 was worth 4.2 trillion marks. Say that slowly. 4.2 trillion marks for a single dollar. The paper had not changed. The ink had not changed. The only thing that moved was belief, and it took everything else with it. There is a story from that year about a man who sat down and ordered a coffee. The menu said 5,000 marks. He drank it slowly, the way you do, and when the bill came, it was 8,000. The same cup, still warm. Perfectly good money, rotting between 2 sips. After the war, the whole world got together and swore this would never happen again. Every currency on earth would be pinned to one, the American dollar. And the dollar itself would be pinned to something ancient and solid, gold. $35, and you could always trade it for a full ounce of gold. A promise, it seemed, carved in stone, the last fixed number on earth. And then came a Sunday night in the summer of 1971. The The president asked for airtime right in the middle of the Sunday night programs. Most people were only waiting for their show to come back on. And in about 15 quiet minutes, Richard Nixon cut the very last cord. From that night on, no dollar on earth could be traded for gold ever again. It was backed by metal no longer. It was backed by nothing you could hold. And here is the part that should genuinely stop you cold. Almost nobody rioted. Almost nobody even noticed. The show came back on, and by Monday, the money worked exactly as before. Think about what that actually means. The single biggest promise underneath every dollar just quietly ended one Sunday. And nothing happened. The machine simply ran on, which tells you at last what had really been holding it all up the whole time. So let's do the honest thing and run that exact same checklist on right now. Reach into your pocket, or don't, just picture the number in your banking app. The one that feels more real, more solid than any stone or coin in this whole video. That number glowing on the screen is not gold. Behind it, there is no gold at all. It is not paper. Most of it was never even printed. About 97 cents of every single dollar you think you have has never existed as anything but a number in a ledger. No vault, no drawer, no printing press. Just an entry kept by a bank that everyone has quietly agreed to honor. It is the very same ledger the village of Yap once kept out loud around a fire. Only now, nobody says it out loud. It just glows on a screen. And that is the whole secret, 5,000 years in the making. The number in your banking app is the rise stone at the bottom of the sea, worth exactly what everyone agrees it is worth, and not 1 cent more. You have never actually seen your money. You have only ever seen the agreement about it. And every day, quietly, without ever thinking about it, you agree again. The oldest money we have ever dug out of the ground is not a coin. It is not gold, and it is not a shell or a coin or a stone disc. It is a clay tablet from Mesopotamia, 5,000 years old, with a single line scratched into it. Someone owes someone else this much barley. Money was writing before it was ever metal. It began as a promise, and it has only ever been a promise. So maybe it isn't really a lie after all. Maybe it's just the longest-running game of pretend our whole species ever agreed to play. And it works flawlessly and beautifully for exactly one reason. None of us can afford to be the first one to stop believing. That's the whole trick. Money is real because we all agree not to look too closely. One last thing before you go and check that number. Your word for cash comes straight from the Latin word for cattle. Pecunia, money, cows. We have been pretending for 5,000 years, and honestly, we have gotten extremely good at it. See you next time.